You're listening to People in Profit, a podcast that focuses on elevating humanity through business, sponsored by Conscious Capitalism Arizona. And now, let's hear from our hosts, Jeremy and Sarah.
Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining the People and Profit podcast. Good business is the answer to many of the global issues that humankind is facing. And that's what we dive into on this show. We are working to change the capitalism narrative by shining a bright light on good business, telling the stories of conscious Arizona companies and encouraging others to follow in their footsteps. Conscious Capitalism website is ccarizona.org. There's a whole bunch of good information on the movements and things that are happening here locally. But for now, we want to go ahead and jump in and shine some of those flashlights and have some of this great dialogue about the good things that are happening in our backyards here. My name is Jeremy Neese. I am on the leadership team of the Conscious Capitalism Arizona group. I am joined today with their pinch-hitting co-host, Kendra Maples. Sarah is on assignment. Isn't that what we say in the broadcasting business?
I like that.
Kendra, hello.
Hello. I'm excited to be in the studio today. We've got one remote guest and one guest that's in the studio. So I'm also on the leadership committee with Jeremy. I'm the VP of our volunteers, and we can always use those to help all of these pieces running, right, Jeremy?
No doubt about it.
For today, the way that I kind of want to get started, I'm going to introduce these two gentlemen, and then I'm actually going to throw it to them. I want to hear a little bit about you guys, your company, and that's going to kind of just lead us into this conversation. So today we have Brett Farmelo, the CEO of Markitors, and we have in studio, we have Brian Stinson, the culture engineer for Peak Fleet. Brett, I'm going to start with you since you're virtual. So let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about you and your company and about Markitors.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. And live in studio means live in my 4-year-old daughter's bedroom.
Yes.
Where I've been
Very similar to what you would experience in the studio.
Yeah, making the most of it for the last 6 months. Yeah, as you said, my name is Brett, and I'm the founder and CEO of Markitors. We're an SEO company for small business out here in Scottsdale. So pleasure to be with you guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, how about you?
Well, thank you for referring to me as a culture engineer. I am actually an engineer. I'm an industrial engineer, which is people and systems. And I spent 21 years in high tech doing IT stuff, but I had this passion for people and culture and leadership development. And I think it was in year 19 or 20 that I finally figured out that was my purpose, to use my engineering degree and knowledge to look at a group of people as a system and maximize for things like morale and skills and engagement. And then 4 years ago left to start a consulting company because we felt, my partner and I felt with more of the world than the company that we were at deserved to have great culture. And so our purpose is to go out there and create as many irresistible work cultures as possible. Oh, I probably should say the name of our company.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point.
You can.
Our company is the Peak Fleet, and Peak is an acronym for 4 of our values: persistence, empathy, authenticity, and kindness. So we consider ourselves a values-based company. We teach the Peak. We help people discover their own values, either at a personal level or organizational level, and then embed that into all of their processes.
I actually had no idea that that's what the 4 of them. I've known you for a little while, and I had no idea that that's what Peak stood for. So
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah,
that's good data.
I love that, and I love the way that it aligns with what we're going to talk about. Jeremy, go for it.
There's no question. It's hard to escape the headlines of the pandemic that's running around, and it's so regularly a place where we see how business has an influence over people and their dollars coming in the door during this time frame. So I'm curious on both of your perspectives on what you've seen in serving your clients, in serving your employees, and still keeping the lights on in the business. What are your observations this time? What are some of the good things and some of the challenging things you're experiencing or that you've witnessed?
Yeah, Brian, you want me to? I'll take that
Please.
First one because when March came, you saw a lot of people going right back on defense very quickly and doing whatever it took to some incredible things. Like, I mean, I really admire the large organizations. I mean, Markitors has like 15 employees, and I couldn't imagine having 150 or 1,500 and kind of making some of the moves that a lot of CEOs did. But you saw a lot of defense. Then you gradually saw some people go towards offense and then kind of back to defense and kind of like get into a more stabilization where now here in November, as we kind of peak around Thanksgiving, it feels like we're getting to a more stable place, even though there's still a lot of unknowns pending. But I feel like a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs have now adapted to the hardest first wave that has crashed, and even if there's a second wave that's coming, it feels like people are now a little more cognizant of what their reaction will be. So I feel like right now where business is at, you're not totally confident, but it's a little more stabilized, and things are looking to get back to normal next year.
Let's hope so, right? Did you have to do anything significant within your own operations to weather
Yeah,
the storm here the last 6 months?
yeah, for sure. Got real scrappy real quick. Had a sweet offer up sale, aka garage sale. I had my 7-year-old taking apart IKEA desks and putting those on offer up because we closed up our office. Obviously around the same time that everyone did, but made the decision that this is going to be a long-term thing.
Interesting.
Probably around May. So we found someone to take over our lease. We put everything up probably like early May and started to get out of rent payments as we went fully remote. So, but I think that's the major change is that before this, we were 80% in person, 20% remote. Every Thursday, we would take a day to kind of work remote and enjoy the change of scenery. But now, as we look forward to 2021, obviously we're 100% remote now, but I think in the future we'll probably flip flop that Pareto's principle and have 80% remote and 20% in person. So that's probably the major change.
That makes good sense. How about within your client community? Did you have to make special arrangements for anyone, or did you witness anything extraordinary on how they are maneuvering in these times?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of businesses, I think that the very first reaction was, "Hey, we want to be there to support other businesses and especially clients in this time." So, the very first thing that we did some, I forget what the fancy name of it was, but we basically offered to emit a one-time payment and work for free for the month of April and May. So basically, and rather than say, "Hey, we'll lose you as a client and let's see how this thing plays out," we're saying, "Hey, like let's not miss a beat in terms of your SEO campaign, and let's just be in this together for however long it takes, and we'll see where it takes us." So that helps a lot of clients get a sense of normalcy very quickly because we're just one item on the whole checklist of figuring out, okay, here's everything I need to do before I can move on. And once we kind of satisfied that checkbox and said, oh, we can continue to work with marketers as normal, I think that helped a lot of clients and bought us some goodwill, down the road.
Yeah, that's great. Great strategy. Thanks for that. Brian, how about you? What's been your firsthand, and then what are you seeing amongst your clients?
Well, I would like to share observations first of what I'm seeing. Two things that really stand out for me. Part of what we do, we help create amazing work culture now, but we also consult on where work is going, work trends, the future of work. In fact, as we enter this fourth industrial revolution, I think that people and culture is really the final differentiator for businesses and organizations. Two things. One, communication is so hard and so important to start with. And one of the things I often tell a leader, because a leader communicates and thinks that he or she is perfectly clear. It usually takes 7 times, 7 ways for it to actually hit with every single person, which can be frustrating for the leader. I think in this one of the future of work trends was this idea of working from home. Can we do it? Living in high tech for 20 years, I saw the argument go both ways, back and forth. The pendulum would swing. So we're sort of proving that it works, but that communication thing that takes 7 times, 7 ways in a normal situation, it takes it's amplified. It's even harder. So maybe there's a third seven I haven't figured it out yet, but the communication is so important, and it requires so much more work
Mhm.
all the way around. The second thing that for our clients, we don't it's rare someone says, I need someone to define my culture, and then they come and find us. It's usually a business metric. It's a hiring problem or a retention problem or a morale problem or an engagement problem. So we help solve the business metrics, business challenges. And while all of those business challenges still exist, there's a new one that I think was starting to emerge only a few months into the pandemic, and it's around connection and isolation. And so
Mhm.
helping people with techniques that if, we're figuring out how to work remotely. But have we really figured out how to work remotely and stay connected? I think those are the new challenges. And it wasn't until a few months down the road that we started to hit the wall and go, wow, yeah, it was sort of new and exciting for month one, two, three. But as we got to month six, seven, eight, I
Mhm.
think we're really starting to struggle emotionally and psychologically. So really looking that as a new business challenge that didn't used to be on our list of business challenges we helped with. Us personally, it was interesting. Our business model is built around going into people's workplace and working with them, and so we did have to pivot. Although we still have some clients where we go in and we do it with masks on and socially distanced. Interesting for me, a number of my clients are schools, public schools, and that work continued even when in the spring when the schools were empty. I would still go and work with the principal, and for me, working with schools has always been the most rewarding part of my job. But working with schools and working with principals during a pandemic that we've never experienced and helping them navigate that was even more rewarding than ever. The one area for me personally and my clients that there was an opportunity that created itself. I've been working with ASU Gamage for a couple of years, and we've been wanting to do a project to define their culture in terms of their cultural values, and they were always just too busy, always too busy. Well, we're 9 months into not having any shows come through town, and so we've actually made a lot of progress and done a lot of work this summer to do that. So that was one silver lining for me.
That's really interesting. Boy, there's a lot there. You talk about that entity that was too busy to work on the business until hard times hit, and now it's time to roll. I'm just curious how many organizations found themselves in that very scenario where, boy, here we go. It's really time for the gut check. And I wish we had had conversations. I would argue that your values are the foundation on how you sprout a long term successful business. So the fact that we were too busy to have that identified before, that must have been real interesting to be sitting shoulder to shoulder navigating through those things. Interesting.
I was gonna say just to see that transition from, like you said, there's so many companies that in the beginning it's, oh, we have to be in person, we have to be in person. I mean, I know so many companies where I had friends that asked, "Hey, can I work remote 1 or 2 days?" And that the answer is always no because of XYZ. And now we're forced to be in this remote setting. Brett, for you, you're saving costs now, right? Because your folks are remote, you're not paying for a physical location anymore. And then, Brian, you're having these different situations come up where they didn't have that time before. So it's amazing to see that transition through all of this. And now both of you really are online, primarily with your companies. How do you see that as like do you see different competition now that maybe there wasn't there before because everybody is remote and everybody is online now? I mean, do you see, and Brett, for you with, what you're doing too, is there greater competition? Is there a harder way for you as a company to stand out? Or, is there a higher competition of, everybody working online and being remote now?
Yeah, it's interesting. So even before a pandemic, there's more digital marketing agencies and coffee shops within a mile radius of where I'm sitting. So the
Oh, geez.
competition's already pretty fierce and
Even from
pretty
your kiddo's bedroom? Jeez.
yeah, pretty. I mean, almost anywhere where you guys are sitting in Max Six. I mean, there's
Yeah.
over 16,000 digital marketing companies in the U.S. alone. And now that you saw, the unemployment rate kind of spike, a lot of those people tried to take their talents and become freelancers and go to platforms like Upwork and offer their services. So, yeah, I think that when it comes to online marketing services, businesses have never had more choice, which is very paralyzing for a lot of companies. Uh, More so than competitors, I think that if anything, it just creates a lot more opportunity for small businesses to diversify their revenue streams and to take things online and to get more innovative and creative. So that's the main trend that I've seen is just not so much a worry isn't more competition,
Mhm.
especially for companies who already have momentum and have an established presence. It's more around opportunities to do better things.
I like that. Is there a way that your companies can stand out a little more? I mean, obviously, there's opportunities for other companies to kind of have a place at the table, but for you in particular, like, are there ways that you guys are trying to stand out a little more? I mean, aside that you're on a handful of shows and you're out and about, but are there other ways?
Well, let's start there because, like, for anyone listening, productivity is something that is amazing in a remote environment. Like, I'm able to use a tool like Calendly and schedule my entire day and have infinitely more meetings than I was previously without commute times, without wait times and things like that. So the amount of conversations that you're able to have, and especially structured conversations with a tool like Calendly, you have 15-minute, 30-minute, or 60-minute meeting windows,
Mhm.
and you're able to have like effective 15-minute meetings much more so than you were previously. Like, you would have to have a 30-minute block. That sounds super petty, but adding it up over time, you're able to have a lot more productive conversations. So I think, if anything, that's probably the smallest thing that you're able to do to differentiate yourself and move your business forward, is just thinking about time management
Mhm.
and how each day can have its maximum impact.
So that's interesting on the productivity. I'm sure it's an individualized thing because Brian, you might have a stat on this. I remember there's something. It's a percentage of the workday is consumed by what they call door jam time. Somebody doing a flyby. You didn't ask for them to knock your door. You didn't ask for them to share what just happened in the meeting they left, but it's what's happened. And so there's a percentage of the day that's just those kind of interactions. Which, on a raw productivity perspective, you're absolutely right. I'm talking and listening. I'm not necessarily getting that task that I was working on before the flyby happened done. But then that spills into what Brian was speaking to, the whole connection and communication and, sort of the intangibles of how much more cohesive is our team when we do get those drive-bys. And so I don't see the answer. I just see the enigma, because it really is for each business to figure out, how do we find the best balance? I know some people who, when they get home, they're like, oh, please, I can't wait for the coffee shop seat to open up because I've got dogs barking. I've got, kids playing downstairs, and this is not a productive environment for me. So it's so individualized. But I am curious, Brian, what are you seeing as far as the whole drawbacks potential from the human elements and what you lose maybe on a 15-minute door jam stop? There could be 15 seconds of something really beneficial there that's lost. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, productivity is important. Productivity is easier to measure than connection or innovation. What comes to mind was I believe it's true, but evidently Steve Jobs, in one of the buildings that they were designing for Apple, wanted to put all of the restrooms in the whole building on one floor. So it would force employees from different departments to kind of crash into each other. And that is where a lot of innovation comes from, whether it's the cafeteria or the bathroom or like you said, the door jam. So there is something to be said for those organic, unexpected, or impromptu discussions that aren't happening. There's a lot more headwind to that, more friction in the system. So while we are all individually being more productive right now, we may see longer term that we've lost a little bit momentum around innovation and maybe even just simple process improvement. I know for us, you asked the question about how did the pandemic change things. We did lose a lot of clients who we were working with, and it wasn't that they saw our work as unimportant. It was important, but it wasn't as urgent as figuring out how to
Mhm.
continue work in a pandemic. The
Right.
the upside for us is that we have an office here in Phoenix. We have an office in Portland, Oregon, and for the most part, we did things in person, and we were happy with those markets, and we thought there was plenty of work to be done. And as as everybody expects that we do work over Zoom, which I think we'll have at some point we'll go back to doing things in person. But I think we've also proven that it is a viable platform.
Mhm.
So for us, it has opened up markets that would have been cost prohibitive for us to work. We can go anywhere in the world or the country. We did have one client who left the Phoenix area and took over a factory in Modesto, California, which would have been geographically undesirable for both my partner and I. And
Mhm.
we're continuing to work with him remotely. And so it was absolutely changing for us the opportunities as we figured out how to do what we do. The consulting, the coaching, the workshops, the exercises, the facilitation, doing it over Zoom, doing it over other platforms, doing it in, maybe smaller bite-sized pieces, or figuring out again how to do it in this new normal. So that's definitely been something for us that we see as a opportunity for us for growth long term.
I could definitely see that. I mean, it gives the opportunity to broaden that reach, right? I have a girl that does the graphics for me, and she's in Egypt. I would have never made that connection. So
Right.
being able to, work together, I do meetings with her in the morning and it's her nighttime, but it allows that opportunity and that reach. So for you guys and that Modesto client, that's a perfect example. Brett, I'm sure you're seeing clients from all over as well. I mean, you don't have that physical location, but what you're doing is, digital and remote anyway. So I'm sure you're seeing kind of your clientele branch a little bit too during this.
Yeah, it's always fun. Like, I mean, the story with marketers is that in 2016 we started to rank on the first page of Google for the term digital marketing company, and we've been fortunate to hold that first position nationwide for the last 4.5 years. So we've always been connected. About 2/3 of our clients have always been outside of Arizona,
Nice.
but it makes days really interesting. Like when you pop on a Zoom call and you just say, "Hey, what's going on? What part of the world are you in?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I'm I'm in New England." "Oh, great." "Ohio, great." Or "Egypt, fine." But that kind of it's just that's how I personally derive a lot of that energy. So the accidental interactions that take place in organizations where you're able to feed off of the people around you, that's where I get a lot of the instant gratification in terms of like hopping on these 15-minute Zoom calls and just being transported to someone's world and someone's business and having that groove throughout the day. So for me personally, it's pretty fun.
Love it. Brett, you were talking about sort of how the pandemic has unveiled an opportunity for, diversification and innovation and all those good things. Are you seeing that reflected in the type of work your clients are asking you to do as the charter changed, or is it still the same things, but you're just kind of helping them look at the problems through a different lens? Well,
Yeah, I'd say that we're kind of a one trick pony, and all we do is focus on search engine optimization. So if they are innovating and coming up with different ways, it's the only way that we're really supporting is going after different keywords to better connect them to target audiences. So not too
okay,
much that I'm
you don't
seeing.
see it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing like I don't have any clear cut examples of like someone was in the restaurant business and now they're doing this. Uh, Nothing too clear. Brian, what about you? Anything on your end?
Around diversity.
Just around
Yeah,
like, yeah, pivoting and doing some innovation stuff.
Well, I don't know if this is exactly the question, but I know for us, so part of great culture is diversity and inclusion. Diverse teams will always outperform homogenous ones, but it does take more work. When you there's a saying: if you want to go fast, assemble a team of people exactly like you. If you want to go far, assemble a team of people who are very different. But again, with differences, you have to be really good at conflict. The we've always had offerings around creating an inclusive work environment, increasing your diversity, and not just gender and ethnicity and underrepresented minorities, but it wasn't always at the top of the list in terms of interest. It was only really the the truly woke clients that would say, "Oh, I want some of that too." It's not so much the pandemic, but the focus on social justice over the last several months has really increased the awareness of the need, the importance. So it's no longer. I think it's shifting from a competitive advantage to have a DEI or a JEDI program to now it's table stakes, and so that has created not just an opportunity, but I think it's created more traction in just an area that's really really important, whether we're helping the client or someone else is, or they're doing it on their own.
pretty cool. Also, if I can flip back, Brett, you've been the number one ranked digital marketing company on Google's top listing for 4 years, like, and just
He threw it in like no
moved
big
right
deal.
along in the sentence. Yeah. It actually begs a two-part question. Number one, I think that's a really good reflection that you know what you're doing, that you can be there. But what do you attribute that to? And how do you, probably more importantly, in my opinion, pair that up with the fact that you've been one of the top places to work for several years running? So there's the efficacy in what you do, and then there's the how you go about doing it. And the second one is your reward for the how. just maybe back up a little bit, tell us the story. How did you arrive at that place, and how have you built this culture that allows you to, score so well in every regard?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. And I might defer to Brian on some of the best place to work stuff because I've got some thoughts with that. But in terms of SEO success, ranking on the first page of Google, it takes a lot of time. SEO takes in between 4 to 12 months for a business to implement improvements and then see a potential benefit. That's according to Google when they communicate what to expect when hiring an SEO expert. So in order to outrank other SEO companies, I was probably at it for 4 or 5 years in terms of establishing expertise online, building links, having digital PR placements, and essentially over time, those helped us get to that first page. So I wish I had more magic to it, but I think that it just gets chalked up to hard work and building credibility online and being in places and being visible and talking about digital marketing. And so that's the tip for anyone who's looking to establish better visibility online. It's picking what you're an expert at and then building that expertise through different appearances on external sites. That's how Google was founded. It was a hypertextual search engine back when Larry and Sergey were Stanford students, and essentially they decided to rank the web according to links. And so flash forward 24, 25 years later, it's still at the core of Google's algorithm, and obviously that's expanded out to 200 plus different ranking factors, but at the core is links. And so for anyone who's looking to establish that expertise, it's picking a few different areas and then essentially building that profile out online. So that's like the high level.
Is this something that always interests you to be part of, or was it an opportunity that presented itself? How did you find yourself in this domain?
So I'll try to keep it short.
We do have a half hour, so go ahead. You could use as much as you want.
So I majored in accounting at University of Arizona, and I founded this website where we basically went out and interviewed people about their career paths, and we put them all on this website for other lost college, soon to be college graduates to look at and figure out, okay, how did that person get to where they are? Let's document their whole career path, and so that it could serve as guidance and then career inspiration. And so we bought an RV. We went out during the summer, me and three buddies, and we interviewed over 300 people about their career paths and put it on the site. And then I went to go work as an auditor. And then about 2 to 3 months into the job, I started getting all of these inbound inquiries from people who were coming across these interviews and getting super inspired by it. So that was like 2006, 2007. And I didn't know what SEO was, but I found out through that website of the power of connecting real world experiences to some online initiatives. And that's how I really fell in love with SEO. So that was 13, 14 years ago.
Good for you.
That's awesome.
That's great.
See, I think
Yeah.
you've talked a lot about the how, Brett, but I think you're a role model for the P and peak of persistence. It's you had to know how to do it, but I also know that, and you haven't really talked about it, but it's you don't just get there and stay there. You get there and you have to work really, really hard to stay there. Is that right?
Yeah, it's try to avoid the how again, but I mean the how for us is like you have to continue to talk about it, you have to continue to prove your expertise, and so it boils down to content and digital PR, and then making sure that your website can be fielded by people accessing the site as well as search engines and crawlers. But you're right, yeah, it's a lot of persistence and keeping up with it, and not. I mean, it's a frequency thing too. Like Google has to look at your site as an established source and a trusted source for whatever information that you're talking about. So you can't just put it all out there once and just expect it to sit there. Like you got to continuously build upon that until you have this good network of content.
So I know you guys were surprised how he just slipped in there the first ranking.
Right.
I was surprised it took 20 minutes for it to come in because I was waiting for it because I think it's a fantastic fact to share.
Yeah.
So,
and then Jeremy,
yeah, please.
the last part of your point about building best places to work, maybe we can, I could just talk about that briefly and kick it over to Brian. So Markitors was voted, best place to work the last 3 years in a row. And I think that last year we missed out on the Phoenix Business Journal nomination. So in 2018, we had won one of the best places to work for a micro business, which is someone under 49 employees. And last year we missed it, but I felt like our workplace was actually better than it was in
Isn't that
2018.
interesting?
And so like I look at those awards, and no knock to the people who give those out, but it's a system, and some of those systems are inaccurate at times. And so I think that the people who win those awards really know if they have a best place to work, and the people who miss out also know. I think probably the best indicator for us is having a tool that we use called Office Vibe. And Office Vibe sends out an anonymous survey to employees and essentially asks you to rank or ask continuous questions every 2 weeks of employees. And that to me is the best barometer for how our organization is feeling about the workplace. And so that's kind of interesting. And Brian, I'm super interested to hear your thoughts too about best places to work awards and what makes a great workplace.
Well, I'm competitive, so I love rankings and lists. Some of them are very much a marketing system, like you mentioned, and not so much a pure, unadulterated, ranking or rating of your culture. What I will say, and we could get into Gallup versus there is a Great Place to Work Institute. So there are organizations that are maybe a little less biased than say a business journal who is there's definitely some marketing at play there, which is fine. What my perspective is for what I do, I very much, whether you are on the list or you fell off the list, I would much rather work with a Brett than someone who doesn't think that that's important. Even though it might be more lucrative to work with an organization that's a big dysfunctional hot mess, um, that's just not what I would prefer to do. Someone like Brett's organization, that they have good culture, they have great culture, they want to be on a list, they want to move up the list, they want to stay number one. Those are the kind of so the good to great or the great and growing.
Mhm.
Those are the kind of organizations that I love working for, because if you, again, whether or not you miss the list or not, you're doing the right things right. You're doing the blocking and tackling. You're doing the pulsing and checking with the employees. You're listening. That's where it starts. So it's you could be on a list and not be doing that and not have great culture.
Mhm.
So I think it's more important that you're doing the right things right, Brett.
And
Cool.
and Brett, I want to go back to the questionnaire that you said goes out every 2 weeks or so, Office Vibe. So it's asking questions, which is great because it allows you to kind of get the feel for where everybody's at. But there's things happening, right? Behind the scenes that's moving the company, that's building the culture, that's supporting the staff so that by the time they get this little questionnaire, they're answering positively, right? There's a lot of companies out there that could probably send this little questionnaire and it's not going to show good vibes. So I want to go back to that because there's obviously more that's happening, more behind the scenes. Is there anything that you can think of that like this is what we do for our employees? This is unique about us. Is there anything as far as what you might contribute to those rankings and to getting the positive feedback on that survey that goes to your staff?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, I wish I had some magic, but I think that from a high level, it starts with the foundation
Mhm.
of what the core values are that guide the company. Like and I say that because it's like, okay, a lot of people cite values, but like actually living it and comparing a company that operated for maybe like its first year and a half without values, and then becoming a company with values. Going back to conscious capitalism, like that's pretty much everything. I think that I would try to remember, like, why do we create values? Like, we operated for like a year and a half without values. Like, what was the inspiration for it? And it was because looking back, finally after like a year of thinking about it, we made like a hire that didn't align with what the culture actually was. And
Mhm.
so that's what inspired our team to be like, okay, here's what the five values are, and here's what guides our behaviors and decisions and actions. I think that that's really the thing that a survey, like a continual pulse, like what you said, Brian, is super important, just to make sure that you have the right things in place, and you're doing the right things that align with the values. And that's a gut check to say, hey,
Yeah.
are we getting out of line, and do we need to realign on some of the different things that we're doing?
So you mentioned 5 core values. What are the core values that you guys have?
So each one's inspired by a client that we've worked with. And
Ooh,
so one
Cool.
is You Are
mhm.
Unique, which is respecting the uniqueness of every human being, inspired by Sportique Apparel out there in Tempe. Another one is Always Fresh, Always Thrilling, which is to innovate to keep things exciting. That is from Fate Brewing Company. We have Take Ownership, which is deliver on all promises. We have Bias for Action, which is actually inspired by my time at jobbing.com back in 2007. And then the last one is Strength in Numbers, use data to drive decisions as well as kind of utilize all available resources. And that one is inspired by my time in the Bay Area, the Golden State Warriors.
Nice.
Bide your time.
I want to ask Brett a question about hiring for values. Our research shows that the cost of a bad hire is about a third of the salary. So I love the fact that you're hiring for cultural fit, using your values. Have you experienced during the interview as you're kind of screening candidates? Have you had, and you're describing this is our culture, and the only way that you can be truly successful at Marketers is to fit the culture? Have you had people say, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't me," and then opt out of the process?
Not really. I would say a lot of people actually try to say, yes, I believe in all of these values. This is totally me. And then you have to kind of like ask some more targeted questions that test that. So one of my favorite questions, one of my favorite things to do in in-person interviews, which I can't really do anymore, is physically hand them a roll of duct tape and say, what are 5 things that you would do with this duct tape? And what we're really testing there is the always fresh, always thrilling, innovate to keep things exciting. Because if you're in marketing and you're doing something like SEO or social media, you've got to talk about a product or service like 100 times a year. So if you can't take this universally loved product, duct tape, and find five uses for it, you're probably not going to be aligning with that innovation side of what we're looking for.
I love that. I might steal that. I love that. Brian, I want to ask you the question about core values. Obviously, you're all about values, but I'm sure you and your business partner have identified your core values as well.
We have.
What are they?
My personal values.
Oh, I like this.
So I told you our company values, we name the company on persistence, empathy, authenticity, and kindness. And in the P, persistence is very common in the business world. We think it's the eek that makes us different. We think it's the eek that people want right now, the empathy, the authenticity, the kindness. On a personal level, let's see, I'll make sure this would be really bad if I forgot any of them. Number 1's open-mindedness. Kind of the next tier would be humility and independence. Family for me as a single dad, a lot of my decisions are based around my 2 boys. And that's the essence of what values are. Values are what drive your decisions and your behaviors. Let's see, what have I? Independence, family, humility. I know I'm forgetting one here. Wellness, and we have 6, and now I feel like I'm forgetting one. But I will tell you, when it comes to, I talked about diverse teams have conflict. All teams have conflict, but with diversity, you will have more conflict. I believe that most conflict, if not all conflict, is actually not about the person or the issue. It's about having different values but not knowing it. So if you can first be clear about your own values, and then 2, make them transparent to others, then you can either avoid conflict or at least navigate through conflict more easily. 2 personal stories. One, 14 years ago, I did a values exercise for the first time, and it was a group of mid-level managers at the company I was at, and there was one person in particular I had a hard time getting along with, and I got along with almost everybody. And his number 1 value was in my discard pile at the very beginning, and I thought, oh, I totally get you now. And from that day forward, I never had a problem working with that person because I understood our differences. So sometimes it's what's really important to you is not important to me. That very well could cause conflict. Jen and I, my business partner, one of her core values is collaboration. And collaboration is important to me. I love it. But one of my core values is independence. Is that the one I forgot? So my sense of independence and my desire for independence sometimes is in conflict with her sense of her value of collaboration. And so knowing that and having it visible, we can navigate through times when otherwise, she might be wanting to work on something and she feels like I'm being standoffish, or I feel like she's, trying to get into my business. But we understand each other because we've gone through the process together. So I think those personal stories are a good way of explaining why it's not just woo woo stuff. It really helps you work through conflict, communication. Actually, one of the things we encourage people when they finish their personal values is we have a sheet that we write them down on, and we ask that you put them on the door to your office, or at least on your cube wall. If so, you imagine somebody coming in to talk to you, and before they even come talk to you, maybe they're going to pitch you an idea, or maybe they're going to ask you or have a difficult conversation. Or they look and say, "Oh, okay, so open-mindedness, creativity or innovation, independence. So I understand now what's really important to Kendra. I will make sure I kind of factor that into the conversation." The other reason why you should keep them handy is these are your non-negotiables. I suspect there's times when you could look back over your lifetime and say, I made a decision and one of these things was missing, and I thought, well, it would be okay. Well, it never is. So if you have the clarity about what's most important to you and you keep them front and center, I'm convinced you will make better decisions more quickly because of it.
I love that. And it just to me it makes sense because you work through all of this with your family members at home, right? You have these conversations to try and make sure everyone is, supportive if you have these differences. And I feel like sometimes we forget that in the workplace. And so you and I had walked through my values I think year and a half, 2 years ago. And that was one of the things that we looked at is I knew from looking at my values, I knew right off the bat that some of the folks that I worked with were the complete opposite. So even though they didn't know I did this exercise, for me, I was like, oh, now this all makes sense. So I think that and then Brett tying in with you guys, that these activities, these actions, these are what help to build these companies and build the success because you're allowing everybody to understand and have those pieces.
I do want to tie back the personal values to what Brett was talking about organizationally.
Hmm.
The when we work with a client, and it sounds like you did this, Brett, we want you to create values that are magnetic, and I want you to imagine one of those old horseshoe magnets. We know that magnets attract, and it sounds like you're doing a good job of attracting talent with your values. But what's the other thing that magnets do? They repel, right?
Hmm.
And so having values that will also repel. That's why I was sort of fishing for the question of do you ever repel anybody that goes, oh, maybe I don't fit here? Because if the opposite of a magnetic set of values would be, I think, values stew, where there's a little bit of everything in there for everybody. So having them magnetic, if I have clarity about what's important to me, my values don't have to be exactly the same as organizational values, but there has to be alignment.
Hmm.
If I see alignment, if I feel alignment between my values and the organization that I belong to, then I'm engaged. And when you're engaged, you are more productive, 2 times more productive. And then the last thing that I share with both organizations, but really the individuals in the organization, I say, when we finish the exercise, I say the day that you walk in and you feel like your values are not being served or you don't think there's alignment is the day you should look for a new organization or a new job.
Since we're still running on values, Brian, I'd like to pick on your corporate value of kindness and how that plays in the marketplace. Because being that our topic is this global thing of conscious capitalism, there's often this conflicted or opposite concept that if you're kindness, then you're weak. You're not capitalizing on the opportunities that might otherwise be there. Brett shared with us that for some of the clients, they waived a month of fees so that they could have continuity in their services, right? So that could be argued that that was a kind gesture, or that could be argued that, no, that was a really business savvy. It allowed the obstacle that was in front of the customer to be removed. I'd much rather lose 1 month of a customer's income than lose that customer indefinitely moving forward, right? So I love that you have that integrated into the fabric of your company. I'm curious how it's reflected in your experience on the street. What are the responses you get, and how do you approach it?
Well, I will tell you a little insider story. It came down to a decision between kindness and love. And the Peel fleet didn't really have the same ring to it as the Peak fleet.
Understood.
When it comes to values, they can be overplayed. So, you can be too persistent. You can be too empathetic. Some people take authenticity to be a license to be kind of a jerk.
Mhm.
And if
Sure.
you're too kind, you could be, kind of rolled over or be a doormat. Which is why the inspiration for the atomic symbol on my T-shirt, where We feel like the peak values are at best when they're in harmony. There's some tension between kindness and authenticity. There's some tension between persistence and what I say, empathy. But in terms of kindness, kindness is a choice. And yeah, you could take it too far. But I think back to this idea that we're exiting the third industrial revolution, we're entering the fourth. We're now, we're leaving this era of process improvement and automation, and we're no longer seeing incremental improvements. We're seeing complete disruption. We're in this era now where you are either a disruptor or you will be disrupted. Well, how are the disruptors doing their disruption? They're doing it through experience, and I think kindness is part of that experience. So here's one very tangible business story. There's if you Google Panera, and I think it's clam chowder, but there was a boy who was visiting his grandma in the hospital and said, "Grandma, well, what could I do for you?" She said, "I really want I think it was clam chowder, but it was a certain soup, and they only make the soup on one day a week." So he went to Panera, and they said, "Oh, well, we'll make it for you." So he posted it, and I think within a week there was 500,000 views and likes, and so that manager at that Panera making that soup, didn't have to do it, but it ended up turning into a really positive business outcome for the organization, for the company.
That's perfect. Yeah. You could then play the counter argument, which is now everybody's going to come in any day of the week expecting a soup. But I still think they did the right thing. They were kind. I'm curious, Brett, what was your on-ramp into conscious capitalism? Was it something like, did it predate your business birth, or did you kind of encounter it along the way?
I just saw people drinking the Kool-Aid and I wanted a cup too. I think that's pretty much it. I'm buddies with Brian Moore, and he goes pretty deep into conscious capitalism. So, and then just you kind of follow or at least get inspired by some of the people that you are inspired by. So as you looked a little deeper into who's involved, it's like, oh, there's actually like some really legit people that are part of the community. So I think that's how I got looped in.
And you identified that you had already been sort of operating in that way. You just didn't have the language for it. Or was it an opportunity for you to really take a look at things like, hey, we don't have values listed out. That's something that's important. And are people doing that?
If I'm being honest, I think that we have not gone to the extreme of like testing our culture and our company against these practices. I think it's just to be transparent. I think it's a group that we align with and the people in it. And I don't think that we've gone as deep as we can into making sure that we really, really fit and like doing the hard work.
That's okay. Jeremy and I can loop you in on the hard work. Don't worry.
Plenty to go on that. Well, Brian, you work with startups, do you not? I mean, I know you work with the whole spectrum of people, but that is one of the areas that you have expertise.
We do work with some startups. And we would love to work with more. We realize that startups don't always have a lot of cash, and if they do, they're spending it elsewhere. Although our research shows that in terms of the reason why startups fail, number one is product market fit. Number two is running out of money. Number three is people issues or culture issues. So there is value in doing it. We are fortunate enough to be able to work with startups and entrepreneurs through ASU as mentors in the venture devil program. So we're both academic associates at ASU. It's about 3 hours a week. So it's been really fun to, again, help people, get their culture right from the beginning. We would love to work with the titans of industry, but we also realize we're probably not going to change the culture. And so we would rather help the next Facebook, the next Google, the next Airbnb get their culture, codified and have it be something that not only doesn't inhibit their growth, but maybe accelerates their growth.
Okay. And when you're working with those young term companies, because you had mentioned a lot of people find you not because they're drawn to your value set, but because they have a pain that is getting flushed out and you happen to have the prescription. Do you find that people are responsive to this? Hey, we need to put some attention into this concept of how you're going to grow, how you're going to focus on people in addition to where the dollars are going to come in the door? Or is it a blind faith? Like, how do you make that make sense to somebody who hasn't walked that walk yet?
Well, I think it's on me. So back to we started the podcast talking about how leaders have to often say things 7 times, 7 ways before everybody gets it. I think it's on me to find the right language of a potential client, or find the right pain point, or find the right meeting them where they are. It's not for them to understand me. necessarily. I do find that conscious capitalists get it a lot quicker than non-conscious capitalists. I think that's what drew me. We started the company. We wanted to be triple bottom line. We did find the process of becoming a B Corp kind of cumbersome. And so it was about 2 years into our history that I discovered conscious capitalism and thought, oh, these people get it. If it's somebody who already understands the tenets of, purpose over profit, understands conscious leadership, conscious culture, stakeholder alignment, then we can get right into talking about culture and values and purpose. We can go right there. But if someone isn't as sort of aware or enlightened, then I'm going to have to talk about hard business metrics, and it might be the cost of a bad hire, it might be the cost of turnover, the cost of some other business metric they're trying to move. I'm trying to increase this process improvement, or I'm trying to cultivate more innovative thinking, and so I have to make the translation for them often.
Yeah, makes good sense. Well, we sure appreciate you being out there doing that. Whenever I get an opportunity to speak with early stage businesses, I can always point to the fact that there's a whole bunch of landmines out there. I can tell you where they're at because I have all the burn marks on my feet from them, or you can go find them on yourself and have the bandages ready. So that's great that you're out there doing that. Brett, I had a question for you. I know you're part of another organization, Turkle. Am I saying it correctly? Could you share what that is and how that
And where the
integrates
name
to what
came
we're chatting
from.
about?
Yeah, for sure. So Turkle is a knowledge platform that creates community-driven content featuring expert insights. So if that sounds like a mouthful, just check out the Conscious Capitalism blog, and you will see every month Conscious Capitalism will pose a question to the Turkle community as well as the Conscious Capitalism members in Arizona, and we collect the best insights, and then we formulate that into an article to essentially have a broader collection of perspective on certain topics. So everything from what's the top 10 tools that your small business can't live without, to how your business is being impacted by the pandemic. The opportunities are endless, and where it really is inspired is going back to the search side of things. 15% of search queries that Google sees every day are brand new, meaning that they've never seen them before. So Google sees billions of searches every day. And if you do the math, then there's 150 million searches that Google's never seen before. So essentially, that's a lot of different questions that go unanswered. And so Turkle is really aimed at satisfying that search intent by relying on community insights. And so right now, we have created more than 250 articles for 50 partners, including Conscious Capitalism, featuring over 1,000, or featuring insights from over 1,000 users. So right now it's in its pure infancy stage. We have a platform that is launched at Turkle.io, but that is about it. We launched it like a month ago.
Okay, I was just going to ask what's the feedback. We can give you feedback because we love being able to have that sampling of information shared every month. And to your point, sometimes if you stick around the same people all the time, you get very similar inputs. And so to be able to get that a broader net cast, you pick up a whole bunch of things that you otherwise might not wouldn't. So that's great to see. That's feedback for 1 month from one of your observers. Anything else you're hearing about that, on how that's actually dipping into that problem that Google is trying to solve?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, maybe they're not solving it, but exists.
Well, they are trying to solve it. They have a feature that's being tested in 3 countries right now called Google Question Hub. It's being tested in India, Indonesia, and Nigeria, with Nigeria being the English-speaking country, so that we can beta test it for the US. But it's interesting because content can't keep up with curiosity at this point. So that gap becomes wider and wider. And so we're really trying to address that in a way that taps into the world's knowledge and people's knowledge, and relying on community insights to help collectively satisfy that.
I think Turkle's also a good example of the stakeholder alignment that's part of conscious capitalism, that you're not just answering, you're not filling in the gaps of questions that haven't been answered, but you're providing a service to people who want to get their voice out there and want to get published, want to get, because it's a crowded market of getting your voice heard.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to the how did I rank on the first page of Google? Building credibility is one of the toughest things to do when you're a startup, when you're just getting going, when you're a small business. And so answering questions and sharing your expertise is a no-brainer way to help build up that credibility online. So yeah, thanks for
See,
sharing that, Brian.
you're doing way more than just drinking the Kool-Aid of conscious capitalism. You're way more. You're you're doing way more than you lead on. And even with the articles that you're talking about, we're in the Phoenix Business RadioX studio, and that's another one that you're supporting with through that as well. So see, you're very well. You just mention it like no big deal. You're just drinking the Kool-Aid. Both of you gentlemen are way more connected than you lead into. So as we start to wrap up, oddly enough, it's been almost an hour. It flies by, especially when you're just, having conversations like this. But before we wrap up and we do get ready to take off, I want to give both of you the opportunity to give any last minute words. And then also, how can our listeners actually reach out to you? Because both of you and the companies that you have bring great value to the community, as well as some of the other members that are part of conscious capitalism. So if you want to kind of give any insight and share how people can reach you, Brett, I'll start with you since you're virtual.
Sure. So in terms of how you can reach us, Google digital marketing company, click on
And you're
marketers,
number one.
go to our site. That's the best way. The ask that I'll put out there is, if you not so much from the SEO company side, but from the Turkle side, if you have insights to share, go to turkle.io, sign up, answer a few questions, and get published. And if you're looking for content for your blog, then definitely get in touch with us, and we can put that Turkle community to work. And then in terms of advice, just say, hey, we're nearing Thanksgiving. Be thankful, be gracious for everything that's happened in 2020. It's been a crazy year, and I think that the crazy energy that a lot of entrepreneurs and people have put forth into their business will pay off in 2021. So keep it up, rest up, and have a good Thanksgiving.
Awesome.
Well said.
Thank you. Brian, what about you?
Well, you can find the Peak Fleet on the web at www.thepeakfleet.com. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn. So if you have, our ask would be, if you know a business leader who needs help with his or her organization, with the culture, or moving business metrics, and maybe it's the culture we can help with. But also individually, if you would like to discover your core values, we do sell a deck of cards off our website that we could help you go through that process. During the pandemic, we've created a digital version, and that actually, if you want instant gratification, if you don't want to have to, even though we ship our decks usually the day that the order comes in, so you'll get it within a day or two. If you want instant gratification for $5 for now, $5, you can go through the exercise online using the same images that are on the cards, and it takes about 10, 15 minutes, and you get to download your value sheet right then and there. So that's available at our website.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
Thank you for
gentlemen.
that, Brian. Yeah, so I guess from our organization, Conscious Capitalism, we'll just share that you can go to the website, ccarizona.org, at any time to check out events that we've got cooking, to get at any of this podcast or any of the predecessors, a whole bunch of good curated information. So please, if you enjoy this conversation, this is easy for me, because whether anybody listens or not, I always enjoy this conversation. So I appreciate you all joining along. And hopefully the listeners pulled away some good things as well. So I bid everybody a fantastic afternoon and a safe, happy holiday season, as Brett alluded to. And thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you for listening to People in Profit, where we showcase the businesses that are elevating humanity through their work, right here in Arizona. Learn more about us at ccarizona.org.